Hello and welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis. I'm David, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm James, my pronouns are they and them.
I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Rob, and mine are he and him.
And I'm Alistair, and my pronouns are also he and him.
Shall we just fucking dive into it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
No warm up, we're just, fuck it, we're doing it live.
No preamble.
Yeah.
As much as you're attempting to insert a preamble by getting me to talk about the lack of preamble, yes. So,
Damn,
Rob, what's up
again.
first? What are we talking about?
Pelosi.
Yeah, she's missing
not
in
news
the
yet.
Taiwan Strait, presumably.
No, I don't mean
Oh, are we talking about the those fucking new models of Zelensky that they've made?
no, I don't mean Nancy
Oh.
Pelosi. I mean a husband who's up in court for a DUI tomorrow. Which someone opined to me on Twitter is the reason why she's risking World War III in Taiwan.
What, just to affect the search engine optimization, so you
Yeah.
type in Pelosi. I mean, God, that's definitely up there as one of the stupider reasons the world could end. Fantastic.
For non-enjoyers of mouth sounds, Jamie will be at this the entire fucking podcast, and I can't stop him, so...
Yeah, Jamie decided to eat a bowl of crisps and peanuts at the start of this, and we had a good 5 minutes of Jamie high detailed ASMR, and we will be releasing it for a one-time fee on our Patreon.
We will not. That's false advertising. Right, okay, let's fucking talk about some dickheads, because that's what we always do in this fucking podcast. Rob, who's up first?
Yes, let's talk about a series of dickheads. Two updates on existing dickheads, and one sort of new-ish one, which is the, and finally, maybe at long last with some fucking consequence, that Unite the Union is now talking about dropping all funding to the Labour Party at the next conference. I mean, it's talk so far, and we've seen this shit like a million times, but it's not new. But this now is in response to the latest round of Labour trying to be the responsible party of government by supporting workers but not strikes, because that's bad. But yeah, apparently...
Rob, going down to picket lines to support striking workers is performative.
Yeah, sorry, that's true, because the MP is not the person on strike. So if you show up but you're not in the union striking, you're just being performative. You're just being woke instead of being, showing solidarity. So there's an important distinction there to be made. The general thesis behind this seems to be that Labour is a responsible government in waiting, and responsible governments don't strike. I think that's what it is, but then it's also not what it is, because it really depends on who's visiting the picket line.
Wow.
Say if you're...
So a truly radical policy proposal there by promising to ensure that no strikes will ever occur by allowing workers to just get paid what they want.
It's a radical new policy. It's a departure. We didn't see it coming from Keir Starmer, but
One weird trick to avoid strikes. Union leaders hate him.
That's right.
And apparently, some other Labour MP was the deputy leader of Welsh Labour said that the relationship between the party and the unions was fine, actually, and then told GB News that Starmer was far more pragmatic than Corbyn. So all the three racists left that watch News on any given fucking day.
Again, I'm asking any of these pricks to define their terms. What does pragmatic mean? Pragmatic in what manner? To achieve what aim? You fucking clown.
Growth. They want economic growth, Alistair. They want economic growth, and the way to achieve that is to be pragmatic and buy more things that are made in Britain.
Going on Fash TV to tell them you're pragmatic is the real pragmatism.
Yeah, exactly. The key Darren Grimes demographic needs to be pulled on board, or they'll never get through in the next election. She added, Starmer realizes that we have to work with unions, but we've also got to appeal to the public to get elected at the next general election. Not the
United States. Unions are mutually exclusive with the public.
Yes, they are fundamentally different tribes. You see, unions, on the whole, tend to live their lives underground, and they are quite stunted creatures. But they do get infravision, which is quite good. But then the general public sort of lives above ground, so they have a bit more ticks to their diplomacy, and you can't be with both. You have to choose between them.
Right, alright, fucking Rob Tolkien, fuck's sake.
Yeah, I'm claiming copyright strike on this bit. Thank you very much. I'm the one who does really torture D&D metaphors.
I was talking about Morlocks, but it's fine. I've been
I
watching.
thought you were talking about moles.
Mole people. But yeah, no, it also really
I
depends.
hate when I'm walking across a field and I fall into a fucking union den. It's just the fucking worst.
But yeah, apparently it also really depends who visits a picket line, whether or not it's acceptable. So if you're Sam Terry and you go to a picket line and you give an interview where you say workers should be paid, that is bad, and you're making up policy on the hoof, and that gets you sacked from the cabinet for reasons. But if you're, say, Lisa Nandy, and you turn up just for the photo but don't say anything, then it's fine. It's good, actually.
Well, I was looking for fodder for comment or commentary. I came across an article by noted Tory John McTernan, who explained actually that what that was a meeting with some constituents. And that's why that was okay.
Mutually exclusive with being in a union.
Oh,
And also, like I saw this like just before we started recording. Apparently, Starmer's on holiday or something, and is going to punish
How would
Lisa
anyone
Nandy
notice?
when he returns. So you just wait till your dad gets home, young lady.
Exactly. Also, I mean, to be fair, it depends on where you dig the Union Borough, right? If it's in the middle of a field, like when you visit and don't comment, then that's fine. Whereas if you dig it underneath Labour HQ, then that's undermining the Labour movement. And clearly
If you
that's
observe
how it
the
works.
union, you collapse its quantum waveform.
Yeah, exactly.
but what happens, James? What happens if the union burrows in my constituency? Am I allowed to visit?
Well, it depends. How did you vote in the Labour leadership election?
I don't remember. I think I voted Luke Akehurst, I think.
Ah, then you're fine.
Okay, cool. Now, just making sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's and all that stuff for and like I can't step over the fact that I just distinctly remember that, apart from the fact that he knows how to draft a memo. You remember when this team got into office and it was all this stuff with he's a really professional, sharp communicator, and he's a QC and he knows what he's doing, and time for a serious opposition, or whatever that fucking Dunt quote was. It's like, no, it's just this fucking pile of mush, because they're so fucking scared of their own shadow that from polling that I've just seen, that was apparently due to Owen Jones making fun of Waitrose. Like, Labour has once again fallen below the Tories in like the most recent polling by 5 points, and that's because of Owen Jones.
I actually lay this squarely at the feet of Tom Wyman's extremely good article of "I Hate Keir Starmer and Let Me Count the Ways," which I advise every listener to go and read if you haven't already.
Yeah, that is... I'm not promising, but if we remember to, we'll put it in the show notes, because it's a fucking banger. You should read it.
We probably won't, but you should look for it.
What I do love about it, though, is Keir Starmer has basically gone, shit, what do we do about this? It's someone we actually want to keep in the cabinet is doing this shit now. How about we fob it off, and in 2 weeks' time everyone will have forgotten about it and no one but the left-wing screechers will care? And that's the gamble. That's the entirety of the gamble. I do not believe that man is actually meaningfully on holiday. Or at least he wasn't on holiday until they realised, we need a reason to kick the can.
I don't know. I saw a photo of him on the beach in a suit the other day, so he might be on holiday.
Was he beside two very confused young women?
That picture's posted every fucking day.
It's a shame they have to take the picture every day, David.
I really hope that this does work for him, though, because if it does, then he may just fuck off on holiday forever because he's finally found something that kind of works for him.
Internal holiday of the spotless Keir.
Exactly.
Well, I think on that cheery note, let's move on to our next tale. And these are essentially, the next two nuggets are like brief updates of stuff we talked about in previous pods. So, you've got to become a regular listener, and that way
Are they
you're
both?
cool,
Are they both? It's still fucked, whatever it was.
Basically, I wanted to give first a brief gamer update. We talked about Diablo Immortal and its
The gamers,
delicious...
they're good now, I assume.
Yes, exactly. And they are also rising up, especially when they've spent over $100,000 on the stupid fucking video game. So we talked about Diablo Immortal in episode 145 and its incredibly shit and superfluous loot box design, where, if you remember, you literally couldn't get to max super level unless you paid out like $50,000 or $100,000 on average to get there. So one insane streamer or a guy with a business model, so that's why I'm not naming them, has gone and done it, and they've spent more than $100,000 to purchase enough lottery tickets or crystals or whatever the fuck it was to get his one character to totally max level, totally max everything. So, you know, good on you for spending
this is just like some guy has done this on purpose as like a business thing. It's not like I have a crippling gambling addiction and unfortunately it's Diablo. Right. Okay. No, that's fine. I just want to know whether or not it's good to laugh at this.
He has won so hard that no one can challenge him. He has bought his way to godhood, and what lies before him? Nothing but a wasteland.
Yes, exactly. Because his in-game ranking is now so high above literally everybody else in the entire game that the game refuses to rank him or like place him in the same sphere with anybody else because he's literally too powerful, effectively stranding the guy with the toppest of the top ranks all alone in a multiplayer games because he can't queue into anything and he can't play with other people. And this has been going on for 2 months.
And Demon Hunter 420 wept for there were no lands left to conquer.
You know what it is? In terms of nerds with like apparently super high paying jobs, gamers are so much worse than furries. Because like when furries earn like 6 figures a year, they kick that down to the community to like artists and shit and fursuit makers, whereas gamers, it just all goes into the pocket of fucking Activision or some cunt.
Yeah. No, unironically, so people will know that I follow art Twitter as a break from politics, and like there are serious heavy-duty artists who are basically subsidized by the furry community. It's not even funny at this point. They've all got their alts where they secretly do art for commission for furries, and it just like it's straight up. It's like it's doing government spending where basically furries tax themselves and allocate it to the arts, and I for one stand this.
Said this guy because I shamefully watched a 10-minute video of this guy. This is also why I'm not giving the name because it's fucking terrible. Gamer YouTube is really fucking shite.
It sucks.
He said literally, I am the only player in the entire world with this problem, which, you know, should have clued you in that you're a fucking moron.
I mean, think of how many Pepe NFTs you could have bought with that money.
This is true.
I mean, there's an element of that, but like credit with the guy where credit's due. He's kind of my understanding is he's also doing this to kind of draw attention to just how fucked it is, and it's part of the spectacle of the whole thing. And
God, I wish we all had $100,000 to spend on making a fucking point. You know what I mean?
But it's like his business is actually going quite well, so this is a business expense for him.
Yeah,
gamble,
but at the same time, tax deductible, right? Okay,
exactly right. You get it. And like it is. We come back to the central point, which is it's a fucked state of affairs that shouldn't exist. And I honestly I think we need new language to talk about these kind of games. They're not like games so much as they're, gamebles. It's not gaming so much as gambling. Like it's basically gambling.
I really hate the way you're saying that word.
Yeah.
Well, like, we need a better term.
It just sounds like fucking gay gambling. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
we need more queer-friendly gambling spaces.
I mean, give it like I don't know a year, Alistair, and I reckon the decline of the British economy will have kicked that into overdrive, frankly. But no, like we need a new language to talk about.
To become drag brokes.
There we go.
Yeah, excellent. Oh dear. But
corals become floral, etc.
Are flowers inherently gay?
I don't know. I'm
Daddy
just feminizing all of the.
Yeah. By the way, the hilarity doesn't stop just with this one guy. By the way, because there's some. I won't bore you with the details. But like because he's the central guy with the problem, and he's also the leader of his entire clan. And apparently you need the leader to like enter certain battlegrounds and stuff. And because he's too strong and maxed out, all of his other friends also can't enter, and they've all paid, according to him at least, between $1,000 and $10,000 to get fancy hats to be the best at the game as well. So not only is he fucked,
Game design
like 20 others.
is my passion.
Just like, so him spending $100,000 or whatever himself was bad enough, but the fact he's got a whole gaggle of freaks that like have also spent more than $1,000 each on a fucking video game, like,
yes,
oh man,
the modern economy is really wonderful, isn't it? I really love it when it's grounded in material concerns.
At the same time, what they've done here is they've actually stopped a YouTuber playing a game, so it's impossible to say if it's bad or not.
Yeah, who's to say? Yeah.
yeah, like I say, it's the apotheosis of winning the game. They finally done it. They cracked it. Now you can just not log off and never play a video game ever again.
On the other hand, though, like the microtransaction Blizzard bullshit does seem to be working for this shit game. Eurogamer is estimating currently that they're raking in about $1 million a day on fucking loot crates and boxes.
Sounds
and
right.
by the way, last week it was in one of the papers, I think The Guardian, that loot boxes and microtransactions are going to be specifically left out of the gambling regulation white paper in the UK. So that's just going to continue without end because it's just video games, and how much can people lose?
Yeah, well,
$10?
it's like loot
Just
boxes
close
and
your
stuff
eyes.
are being left out now, and then later on it'll be slot machines and like bets that get left out as well.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, in all honesty, again, we need a new language to talk about this because these are not games.
No,
They're just
no,
not.
they're slot machines.
Yeah.
They're
I
slightly
mean-
more interactive slot machines.
Yeah, I mean,
Poggy.
even then, Rob, like the language already exists, but because of the level of obfuscation that like the games industry and like literally hand in hand, essentially with the actual gambling lobby, they just obfuscate all of it behind, pay to win and loot crates and all that shit. When it's just the exact same fucking mechanism as we've sort of already been over. And the game itself, in as much as it is a game, is fucking bare bones. Where it's like, is it? Like it isn't a fucking game. It is a game in the sense that a fucking game of roulette is a game.
Yeah.
So a game then.
We've gone full circle, much like a game of roulette.
Except it's not like we refer to it in passing as a game of roulette, but eventually it reached a certain point in a cultural consensus we went, it's not a game, it's gambling, and they're fighting tooth and nail to prevent that happening. So I honestly think like the reason we need new language is to get around that obfuscation, but easier said than done, I suppose.
It's a puggy, that's all it is. It's just a fucking puggy, except you require a graphics card to run the bastard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Moving swiftly on to another update. We haven't
Do you
talked
think
about
you could do
and
like when they used to like play by mail RPGs back in the fucking day?
Yeah.
No, Grandad.
Before the internet, yeah.
No, I'm here for it, Jamie, but only because I'm a huge nerd. Carry on,
Do
Grandad.
you think you could do like those, but with like, you know what I mean, like loot boxes in those where the players have to send you like a fucking winning scratch card from the lottery to get a certain sword or whatever?
I think Blizzard already has those. I'm fairly sure they do. They used to have them for cosmetics. Some of them go for like tens of thousands of dollars on eBay.
I mean, let's be real about this. This has kind of already been done. It's just been done in electronic form, which is more convenient than using the mail.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why I took it backwards to using the mail for comedy purposes. Yeah.
All right, Grandad. We all when we said we're excited about posting, we didn't mean like that.
Well, get on my level.
Jamie was shitposting before the internet existed.
Off my lawn.
What evidence? There were no weapons in that cave.
Libel.
Zone was once a paradise. Your breed made a desert of it ages ago.
Another callback I wanted to do is all the way back to episode 103, and where we talked about the UK gas industry, which we haven't done for a while to keep Jamie sane. But I wanted to talk this time about bulb energy. Remember when that was taken over by the government, because literally nobody could afford to buy it at a time when the customer liabilities and the gas prices were way too high. Obviously, we're not in a cycle anymore where gas prices are super high, so don't worry about it. So I have some really good news for everybody. Bulb is back on the market, so the private sector can perform its efficient magic, buy it up, clean it up, and then presumably your gas bills will be lower again.
Why?
Well, because it has to be, because the government's running it. But the government can't run anything.
But why does anyone want to buy it? Why not just shunt the fucking customers over to some other bunch of pricks?
Because it's still way too big, and there's not a lot of people that actually can absorb 1.6 million customers. Not to worry, though. In the meantime, it has already cost the government 1.7 billion to bail Bulb out in the first place, as well as its 1.6 million customers.
I bet they're not getting that back.
No, of course not. Actually, they may have to give away even more money to get rid of Bulb from their books.
This is fucking incredible. Like, if the ostensible party of sensible business management. I'm going to buy this enormous asset, and then I'm just going to sell it at a fucking loss because I know how business operates.
Well, it's good for
by
business,
selling
though.
things for less than they're actually worth.
Yeah, business operates by being paid by the government.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, government in this particular case has not been taking very good of business because while it was being managed through, I want to say Teneo or another consultancy office. So while they were being run by the government, they didn't hedge any of the energy prices, so they're just paying straight through the nose. Which has maybe cost like £1 billion extra because they didn't lock in prices far in advance enough because they just wanted to get rid of it. So they didn't do any of the normal company shit while it was in ownership. And it's, by the way, it also has been paying out 2 million quid every quarter in bonuses to keep important staff members around. Because they ran it so well that I clearly must assume that the people getting these quarterly bonuses...
You say bonuses, I say bribe. Like...
And also, the CEO hasn't had to take a pay cut, even though his company exploded underneath him. He's still on $250K a year, by the way. But that's... I mean,
it's effectively right. This is annoying because obviously I'm affected by this because I went from Avro Energy to Bulb, and I've been getting emails from Octopus Energy throughout this. Right, it has been being run by Octopus Energy, who've been running it kind of badly, not doing the hedging, etc. So there's a reason and incentive for them to get paid to take it properly. But in all practices, it's just a legal fiction. It's been Octopus Energy I've been running my energy this entire time, right?
Yeah, but it's going to be technically the company Bulb has been in administration by the government, but the clients that it had have been shifted over to other energy companies. So you're not technically with Bulb anymore. You are just in general with Octopus. But don't worry, because of the magic and the efficiency of the private market, there was only one single bidder for Bulb, and it turned out to be Octopus Energy because everybody else pulled out of the bidding process. So, instead of like a multi-company fight where the government would get like a good price, Octopus, which, by the way, according to the Financial Times, has literally never turned a profit in its entire existence, now has sole reign because they're the only bidder left. So either the government will need to like chop up Bulb's former customer base and spread them around, or they need to give Octopus more incentives to take over the bankrupt company where people are still getting paid massive bonuses.
I can't wait until this time next year when the government's running fucking Octopus.
No, actually, I'm with you on this, Jamie. Do you know what I reckon's going on here? I think they basically had a big chat and they're like, listen, guys, we're not long for this world, so how about we let us get in line, and then when we go, one of yous can pick us up, and we'll just keep rolling it, essentially, and that way everyone gets paid and nobody goes to jail. And that's it. That's it.
I mean, honestly, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. So like there was a nice quote from in the FT from a person close to the sales process said, "This is a market that is a disaster, and this is a company that is a disaster within that market." So Bulb is a really great asset, and I'm really happy that everybody's literally everybody's chipping in for this, because if you remember, there's that rule that means that if the remaining standing energy companies absorb a losing company, they can turn off like the money that costs. They can put that on your personal account. So the price caps on energy are going to go. Latest update was to 3,850 in January, and 164 quid of that is going to go from each and every one of you to Bulb Energy to clear that up. Thank you for your contributions.
Right, well, I just want to remind everyone that the CEO in question has
the right to privacy.
Uncle Ted, is that you?
Ofgem does have like an answer for this, which is it's good to keep this stuff in mind.
I can think of a few
because they are taking
going
care
door
of.
to door with a bat now, are they?
No, it's in a way they are, but they'll just be coming around to collect later.
I mean, this is going to be fucking disappointing when you go, oh no, they are. That's setting everyone up for fucking crushing realism coming through here, isn't it?
For people who are on meters or prepaid credit instead of a monthly invoice, because the bills are going to be so fucking high that you probably can't pay. So Ofgem's answer to all this is to increase but more spread out consumer debt. So if you already have no money, don't worry. Ofgem will just give you more credit to pay off on a longer term, which is good actually. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I mean, I can see you've skipped a few steps between Ofgem does thing and man turns up at door with bat, but yeah, all right, I can follow
the end result is exactly the same. I mean, JB, I think you've also been having a wonderful time with British Gas as well.
Wrong reasons.
Yeah, wrong house.
British Gas, like whoever runs the IT for British Gas is robbing them fucking blind because like nothing ever works. They're absolutely fucking useless.
Yeah. So simultaneously, critical support, but also fuck you.
Yeah.
I condemn your speech, but I defend your right to say it.
But no, they like when they took us on, I told them I didn't want the meters to be like set as smart meters. I'd just give them readings because I didn't fucking trust them. And they just like turned the gas meter and then like later the electric meter to fucking smart meters. But like I sent them meter readings last week, and then 3 days later they sent me an email going, "It's time for meter readings." And when I went to put the fucking meter reading in for the lecky, I couldn't because they were like, "It's a smart meter. You don't need to give us readings." And then I was like, "Okay, where's the bill?" And it just like fucking nothing. And then so I went on and I finally found that there's a thing on their website where you have to tell it how often you want the smart meter to like send in its fucking reading. And that none of the options were set. So I set one, saved it, and then still nothing happened. I went back the next day, it hadn't remembered what I'd saved it as. And I tried it again a couple of times and it just doesn't work. And so I rang them and I tried to give them a bill, let the reading over the automated system. And it just told me, "No, you're on a smart meter. You don't need to give us a bill, you silly sausage." Do you know what I mean? And so I had to fucking wait like 40 minutes to speak to some guy. And he was like, "Oh, have you tried I was like, "Yes. Yes, I've tried that and I've tried that. Can you just fix it?" And he couldn't fucking fix it either. So he just had to generate a bill on vibes in the end, which was great for everyone concerned. But yeah, they're just absolutely fucking like inept, like hilariously so.
I just feel
this has been the personal beef section of the podcast.
David, don't be silly. We know that's the whole episode, like every episode.
Yeah.
Also, for the benefit of our listeners, if you can avoid getting a smart meter, do, because the real reason for smart meters is we let them do remote disconnections without having to send a guy round to do it. That's it. That's the whole point of smart meters.
There you go.
Also, at the risk of stating the obvious and comedy thing, but turns out smart readers aren't very smart. It's that kind of comedy that you can expect every week on Mock the Week, or not anymore.
Oh well. Anyway, good news for one octopus this week. Okay, what's up next?
How come you could do that? Anyway, swiftly moving on.
I failed nothing, that's why.
Swiftly moving on from one sort of baseline necessity for human life to another. So for tonight, for the main story, I wanted to talk about, as something I wanted to talk about for a while. I wanted to talk about the water companies.
Knackered pipes?
Yes, it is about knackered pipes and millions of litres of
lead.
poo running into...
I want more of it in my water.
Well, you're getting more in your water. Everybody's getting more in their water. Lead is still in many amounts of pipes in British homes. If your home is built before 1970, there's a strong chance you have lead pipes, and you may indeed be poisoning yourself and your children. That's not a joke. That's actually true. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, that's what gives everyone the Blitz spirit.
Yeah, it sounds terrible, but it is actually something that increases your citizenship level.
It does.
Like what's really funny about all of this is that it's not funny. It's literally true. You're describing Britain very, very clearly.
Yeah.
What is funny about this was it which water company was it that was sending like fucking Uber drivers to look at leaks instead of a fucking like?
We will get to the Uber drivers and the leaks. Like that's definitely part of this fucking story. So the reason that sort of set me off on this rabbit chase is last Sunday there was a piece on Sky News. I'll just give you a little bit of it. As energy costs soar, be prepared to pay more for water too, or else face shortages and queues for emergency supplies in the future, an infrastructure chief has warned. So it's on you to make things better, and remember that as I start to tell you about water companies.
No, because I know as a British person that the army will simply do it.
Well, actually,
there will not be an emergency. The army will sort it.
Fine, because Scottish water is still nationalised and doesn't have nearly the amount of problems as anything in England and Wales.
No,
so
doesn't taste like shit either.
So essentially, UK water infrastructure is so incredibly bad that if we don't improve things drastically and with many billions of pounds in the very near future, collecting water in bottles or large canisters from emergency supplies is really not something out of the question. And especially given that we're currently experiencing heat wave and Britain has never been this dry since 1976, and the water supplies are so low that there will definitely be reduced flow or even a chance of total cutoffs even in this October as we're speaking right now.
No, I think you'll find, Rob, that what will actually happen is England will just take all of Scotland's water. I think that's the backup plan that I've heard floated in a few papers.
That has been a plan for a long time. That was one of the sort of Boris mega construction projects. He was enamored for it for a while, that they would build giant pipes from Scotland and the Pennines all the way down to London to sort of abstract the water into the capital. It ended up not happening for, obvious engineering reasons, but that was a plan for a good long while there.
It does sound extremely like Boris Johnson to be like, do you know what's a jolly good idea? Those aqueducts that the Romans had. Why don't we build one of those from Edinburgh or whatever?
Yeah. Edinburgh's, it'll work perfectly fine because Edinburgh is more north, which means it's higher up, so it's just a big slope running down, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
the Edinburgh water slide.
The Edinburgh water slide to London.
Yeah. You get the Edinburgh water slide to London down, and then you get the Brexit railgun back up.
Yeah, because you can float on the Edinburgh water slide like little Lilo and just make your way down.
Yeah. If they aim the railgun at Loch Ness, then you land in water and you're fine.
What's your preferred mode of public transport? Oh, lazy river.
Yeah.
The flume.
So you might be thinking, well, that's
didn't work. Fuck.
That's a serious problem. That's something that needs doing. However, our lovely privatized water companies are currently losing every day up to 20% of all water that's transferred through their pipes through leakage because it's all old and the maintenance for mysterious reasons have never been done.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Remind me, why was it again that we sold all of the nationalised water utility into private hands?
Shareholders?
It's because of a demon in human form called Margaret Thatcher.
I thought it was because they were meant to modernise the pipes and.
Yeah, that was definitely the plan. And if you're thinking 3 billion litres a day, that's like yes. If you're thinking like 3 billion litres a day, that's so much. It's kind of hard to comprehend. Consider it as 25,000.
I use more than that for a bath.
Yeah, could you give us it in?
We've seen the size of your garden,
please.
No, I can give it to you in 20. It roughly measures out to about 25,000 litres a second, or pouring 50,000 pints filled with water every single second onto Jamie's lawn to wet his fish.
That's quite a few funerals.
Yeah,
it's quite a Viking funeral he's got going. And if you're living in the London area, by the way, your friends at Thames Water are single-handedly responsible for almost 7,000 of those litres every single second. However,
oopsie daisy.
There is a drought going on.
We all make mistakes. The question is,
you say mistakes. You say mistakes. I say concerted attempt to sink Britain.
To answer your question...
See, it's not so fucking bad now, is it?
No, it's fine, actually. All right, well, this podcast's over. See you next week. Remember to listen to Peace at Home with Music by Jordan. However, I do want to stress, none of this is the fault of the water companies. It's your fault. And hosepipe bans are currently...
You've become too accustomed to water. You've become addicted.
So hosepipe bans are currently already in place on the Isle of Man and in Hampshire, and you can get up to £1,000 fines if they catch you running a water hose during the ban. But if you'd like to complain about water mains bursting in your area or the massive fine you just got, good luck, because Ofwat, the regulator, noted in its latest reporting serious customer service failures at all water companies, all 10 of them. So don't worry about it. It's fine. You can't talk to anybody. So that's just like on the sort of water consumption, water leakage side. So let's see what else is going on. The Environment Agency report, which came out last week on environmental performance of water companies, noted that last year, 2021, was the worst year since 2013, with 62 serious pollution incidents. And by serious, I mean literally hundreds of millions of gallons of raw sewage entering our rivers and coastal waters. And in its foreword, the chair of the of the Environment Agency literally writes as a warning that board members and CEOs of water companies should be jailed for future incidents. That's not the kind of...
I welcome the ideas put forward in the foreword, and I invite them to go further.
It's quite something, although the Environment Agency are also not entirely to be trusted, because they do have a long history of being quite in cahoots with the water companies and also being underfunded to the point of being unable to do any of their jobs. Singled out for special treatment, by the way, were Southern and Southwest Waters, who both had 1 out of a possible 4-star ratings, with performance terrible across the board.
Do these ratings go as low as 0 though? Because I don't want any of those.
They do not
rip off. Well, that's horseshit then. So it is 0 fucking stars out of 3 then.
It is essentially 0 stars out of 3, but they can't quite give that. And in the meantime, despite the pipes leaking, the lead being in the pipes that are leaking, the massive environmental
at least the lead's
damage,
leaking. You know what I mean? Imagine how much worse you'd be if that made it to your house.
Well, in
many ways, they're saving the British public.
Well, they are, Jamie, in a very literal sense, because what they're doing to combat the amount of lead that's dissolved into your drinking water is they add a subform of phosphates to it, which stops the dissolution of lead into the water. But the phosphates are very bad for fish, and so then when they get flushed down, they cause giant algae bloom that kill all the fish.
That's all right, though. People aren't fish. That's not a problem.
No, it's fine. We don't need biodiversity. Biodiversity's pretty
tell you what is a problem, though. Tell you what is a problem. All of these unnatural phosphates getting in the road of that good British lead. That's great replacement. That's what that is.
Is it these phosphates that's making the frogs gay?
Among many other things, yes, it is. It's not those specific ones.
Tim Farron come on the podcast.
Yeah.
But don't worry, in the meantime, capitalism's function is continuing good and normal as usual, because in the nearly 30 years of privatization, billions of pounds or hundreds of millions have been paid in dividends, despite all the water companies being incredibly in debt.
I was worried there for a second.
I know you were. I know, as a big investor in water companies, Jamie, I know you were getting very stressed out about all this.
It's not so much an investor as a collector, really. And according to the Financial Times, like the total capital expenditure, which is like big plant stuff to like make new infrastructure happen, that's dropped 20% since the 1990s. So they've dropped maintenance and renewal by more than $1 billion over the last couple of decades. Yeah, because those aren't sources of profit, Rob. It's very simple. You don't build any infrastructure because that's expensive, and you just run the shit that does exist into the ground, because then that's where all your profit comes from.
Are we heading towards like the government begrudgingly forming some sort of like national maintenance service so that they can like privatize the profit, but like fucking nationalize the
I think that's certainly what the water companies would like, but and I think they might get it.
They'll
under
track
the Tories.
for
They'd
pipes.
probably get it on the Labour as well, quite frankly. So a very brief, because it's always good to get a sense of history about these things. A brief historical overview with a lot of credit going to a report called UK Water Privatisation: A Briefing. It's written by Emmanuel Lobin and David Hall at the Public Service International Research Unit. So essentially, in the before time, there were public regional water companies, most of them public, some of them private. They used to just run the show with a few private operators, but those were strictly limited by law to not be allowed to return more than 5% a year in terms of dividends. The rest had to be reinvested. However, that was a bit of a hodgepodge. So in 1974, the water services are reorganized under 10 regional water authorities, or RWAs, each being responsible for water quality, water supply, and water sanitation in a given region. Mind by this time, when these were formed and in the years following, they did sack 30,000 of their workers, but it created a more unified system. Whether or not it was any good is a separate question altogether, but it was unified, which of course helps, because this is when we get to Margaret fucking Thatcher again. Much like the bus episode, you can't escape this fucking demon. And she, of course, thought that these regional water authorities under public control shouldn't be under public control because the public sector is bad. So one of the first things she did before privatizing the whole thing is said you can't raise any more money in the form of debt as investment, because debt would be getting in the way of a better, more private future, because if you put the thing on the market with debt, it doesn't really work out that way. So in 19...
it's so fun when it's like, oh yeah, that asset that you've got now, that doesn't count. But that debt, that's a very nasty word that we're going to have to talk about.
Very much so. Well, not really talk about it, because one of her first actions before privatization was to make all the minutes and the attendance of the board meetings of the Regional Water Authority a secret, so the public couldn't know what was going on inside them anymore. That was in 1983. And then in 1988, we get the Water Act, which turns the whole thing into a private shit show. And I say shit show because, of course, what was going to happen is what we have now. A very efficient private sector that has the ability to access the finance needed to do big investments to keep our water clean and safe in the future. And it would create competition, which would be better, because competition makes everything better. Animal spirits of the markets, all that,
As with the fucking buses, as with the trains, as with electricity and gas, if you want to change your provider or the company that you're doing business with, you just get a different set of pipes piped into your house, or a different railway station built near where you live, or a different bus company set up. Though to be fair, you could literally do that yourself. Apparently,
you could, yes. But I do say, competition in the private market, but so what happens is the 10 RWAs are turned into 10 different private water companies and are literally handed all their assets. Not only handed all their assets before they did this transfer to the stock market, the government wrote off all the debt previously held by the public authorities, and also gave them each about £150 million as a little treat as startup capital.
Oh, I'd love to have a little goodie bag which has in it 150 million quid, all my debts wiped away, and also a shitload of fucking assets. Cool.
They also got one more present, which is even more amazing. The government gave each 10 of them a 25-year concession in their region and protection against any form of competition. So we didn't so much create healthy market competition as 10 literal regional monopolies, inscribed by law to last 25 years.
And when's that up? Is it finished
It was up in 2013. But wouldn't you know it, even though they can compete now, they do seem to prefer sticking to their own region where there is no competition, and they have a sort of
you don't want to get in a turf war with a water company. It just gets very ugly very quickly.
Exactly. It's lots of flick knives and people clicking fingers and dance moves. It's very dangerous out there.
Very 1950s of you, Roman.
So not only did they have all their debts wiped off, given a literal monopoly and 150 million each in a goodie bag, the Thatcher government then proceeded to sell them about 20% under market value in terms of the price asked for the shares when they came on the market.
It's just good business sense.
Yeah, and they also got an exemption from paying taxes on any profits they made.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yeah.
And one more thing.
Yeah.
President Deal strikes again.
Now, I mean, look, it was really hard for them because their profits only rose 150% in the first decade. So, you need that kind of support to keep going. So apart from having now these 10 privatized entities, plus some others that were private before, there are now 3 separate regulators. There's the Drinking Water Inspectorate, drinking water quality. There's the Rivers Authority, which is now part of the Environment Agency, which looks after the environmental parts. And
there's Off-Moist.
Yes. Which, much like Ofgem, where it concerns energy prices, Ofwat is by statute responsible for making, for setting the prices, what the water companies can charge people, and how much they should invest. However, Ofwat has one further mandate, which I really didn't know about. They also are by statute responsible for making sure water companies are profitable. That is their mandate. They must ensure that water companies turn a profit to their investors at all times under all scenarios. Which came in handy 2 years ago when 4 of them sued Ofwat because they thought they weren't making enough money and the competition authority agreed with them.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I mean, and then...
there's another boy with a nicer fucking, I don't know, like, console. Okay, little Timmy, you can have your own, and this one's got all the bells and whistles on it.
You promise to go to school tomorrow or invest in new sewage plants? No. To everyone's shock,
I'll think about it.
So, of course, to everybody's shock and surprise, the first decade after privatisation saw a 46% rise in average water bills in England and Wales, but no significant increase in quality. It's weird how that happens. That normally never happens in case when shit gets privatized. They also did incredible shenanigans, like in their budgets for the year going forward, they would promise a lot of infrastructure spending to Ofwat, and then they would yank that promised investment at the very last moment because there was a clause written in that said, if you can't invest what you were promised, you can now count that not invested money as profit. So they would just say, well, we're going to invest a lot. And then in December 30, they would say, oh, actually, we decided not to. Can we give that money to our shareholders? And then Ofwat said, yeah, that's fine. That's sub-clause, whatever it is.
Well, if you think about it, the real infrastructure of the business is the shareholders, so...
Exactly. And who are the shareholders, you ask? Well, they're pensioners and, normal people like you and me who have their money tied up in the stock
pensioners.
They also pulled some amazing other shenanigans. This is from the report I cited at the start. Yorkshire Water was expecting to avoid a 50 million expenditure on sewage treatment because the Conservative government promised to redefine coastal waters near the city of Hull as sea, where untreated sewage could be dumped freely, instead of as an estuary where the sewage would have to be treated. So by simply saying, no, that's sea, you can dump all the raw sewage you like.
Once again, Progress falls victim to the old tactic of, you can do that, it's legal now.
Yeah.
But don't worry about it, though. It's been really good for some...
This was a crime, now it's an option for business.
Yeah, it's just we're creating more efficient markets for raw sewage that the fish can now trade with each other, which is what I assume is what's going on down there. But don't worry about it. It's been really good news for some, though. Thames Water just had a brand new CEO, and they gave him a £3.1 million golden hello for merely coming on board.
That is the shittest low effort phrase ever as well. Like, fucking golden
just say
hello.
you gave the guy a fucking wank, and then let's move on with our lives.
He, by the way, is joined by current Severn Trent Water CEO Liv Garfield, earning $4 million. Peter Simpson, CEO of Anglian, more than $1 million last year. And from what I've seen in my research, I don't think there's a single water company CEO that is under £1 million a year in pure salary. So excluding bonuses, perks, and other shit like that. So don't worry about it. Some people are doing very, very well out of all this. Not the water companies, though. They are increasingly sinking in a giant mire of debt, about which much more later. But first, let's talk a little bit about the actual water infrastructure and the leakage that we talked about a little bit earlier. So the following bits of like the rest of the story, a lot of this work has been done by Gil Plimmer at the Financial Times, who is a journalist. He works a lot on infrastructure issues in the UK. So thanks a lot for, like, I don't know, Christ knows how much of her work. So thank you very much for that. This is a story from last week. Let me just read you a little bit. This is the introduction. The tap water in Ben Archer's apartment in the Herne Hill neighbourhood of South London flows through toxic lead pipes, increasing the risk of brain damage to his children and prompting him to pay for bottled drinking water. Tests carried out by the local authority this year revealed that more than half the 96 flats on the privately owned estate in Lambeth had lead levels in drinking water above the legally permitted 10 micrograms per litre, and 60 are at risk of receiving water above the safe levels for lead in drinking water. So he's not alone. This is not like an isolated example. Millions of UK homes still have genuine lead pipes, some of them from the Victorian era. And that's because even though lead pipes have been forbidden in new home construction since the 1970s, they are prevalent, according to Ofwat, in homes built before then. The Financial Times estimates that could be up to 25 million homes. And if you're wondering, well, that's the
just wait though. Just wait though until like they start, like, you know, they say that for climate to help with climate change, all new homes can be built with like paper pipes or some shit.
They are not far removed from that. One of the things that how Barratt Homes and other developers are currently very angry about is that they have to, when they build new sites, that they're not just allowed to dump their building waste into like the local streams. So they're trying to get that regulation changed. And if you're wondering, well, who's
bury it under the houses? No one will ever find it there.
So if you're wondering, well, who's responsible for the literal lead in your water? Well, the mains, so the main lines, they are the responsibility of the water companies, but the bit between the mains and the tap is shared between the water company and the property owner. So in most cases, that would be your landlord, who is, of course, incredibly incentivized to do a very expensive excavation underneath your building and get the lead out of your pipes. So, which means, by the way, that lead pipes are usually only replaced when there's like major renovations of the entire apartment block or council house or wherever you live. It's from before the 1970s, or when the owner specifically asks for an official measuring of lead content in the water. It's not done by the water companies or your landlord. You have to specifically ask for it, and I think you also have to pay for it. So if you think like there's something really wrong with your kids and the water tastes funny and you don't have the money to get it tested, then you're stuck. And, you know, buy more plastic bottles of water, which is also good for everybody. And as I mentioned, you know, one of the ways that the water companies are fixing this is, instead of replacing pipes and doing actual investment, is they're just using that type of phosphate that ends up killing all the biodiversity downstream when your water ends up as sewage in the oceans, essentially. Remember, by the way, capital expenditure, so investment from water companies for pipes and replacement and real plant work, was slashed 20% since the 1990s. As I mentioned before, just like a number to keep in mind as you're wondering literally why your actual children have brain damage.
You know, it is always so much fun when we go through essentially like the reality of what privatisation has done to whatever natural monopoly it is we're talking about of the week, and just how, when you actually lay it out all in front of you, just how completely fucking insane the entire endeavour has been from start to finish, and absolutely ludicrous that any person who considers, you know, the public to be something that matters as opposed to private shareholders and their share prices, just the idea that anyone could oppose nationalising fucking utilities, like the fact that it means that we would actually be able to maybe build some fucking infrastructure in this fucking country for once, rather than just, you know, taxing not even taxing, extracting rents from the rot.
It's fucking incredible. I mean, seriously, while I was doing this, and also when we were talking about the buses a couple of weeks ago, this is the shit that drives me. It drives me completely insane. I don't understand how anything is allowed to function like this in whatever it is, the 9th richest economy or some of the wealthiest. It's like this shit is fixable. You can't have these fucking private energy companies or private water companies or private bus companies in the middle just draining the life out of the fucking society that is. And I'm not kidding around here.
It's fixable if the political will is there, but by God, there is no fucking political will whatsoever.
No, because we just started talking. When we started this episode, we started talking about the Labour Party and their current stance on renationalisation, saying, no, we can't do it because our own fiscal rules that we've made up in our own fucking head for no reason than to please, focus group Brenda, the insane Tory racist who lives somewhere in the Red Wall, a thing that doesn't exist. And she doesn't like the idea of it because she only reads the Daily Mail and a fucking conservative woman.
Let's cut through this. It's not that there's no political will, it's that there is a concerted effort to make sure that these ideas are not taken seriously. It's not that they've decided for their rules they don't want to do it, it's they don't want to do it and everything else is justification after the fact. And making sure the people who don't want to do it are the ones in a position where they get to decide whether it happens or not is an entire industry. As everything Rob has just laid out has basically explained. It's all like massive money in the background decided they wanted it this way and that's it. And we now live in the ruins that follow.
You know what else is really super cheap, by the way? That's the next thing I want to talk about. Is instead of treating water, why don't you just dump raw sewage into our seas and coastal waters and rivers? That's really fucking cheap. So official data for England and Wales last year show that there were more, in 2021, there were more than 370,000 spills in the year. So that's more than 1,000 sewage spills into public waters literally every day. And some of them are tiny trickles, but some of them are literally like giant drain pipes hosing shit into your waters. Current record...
Rob, this is a good thing. This is a good thing, and it makes perfect sense, because the housing market in the north of England, and like Hull, for example, like you said earlier, the houses cost much less. So when you dump waste there, it's got less of an impact, right? And it's also good because it's keeping the house prices down. And really, isn't that what we need in this economy, is cheaper housing? So I don't see why you're getting so mad about it, Rob.
Well, I mean, you'd think so, but the current record holder for most spills in 2021, which released huge amounts of sewage into the environment of Manchester, a city with incredibly exploding property prices as well, and the northwest of England, is United Utilities, which had 81,588 spills last year, according to environmental agencies figures quoted in the Financial Times. 81 fucking thousand, nearly 82,000 a year. By the way, not for nothing, but you remember those environment agency star ratings we were talking about earlier? They have a 4 out of 4 rating, so everything's fine. Don't worry about it.
Of course they do. Yes, and I also love the language like spills rather than dumps, Just fantastic. Absolutely.
No, because this is all...
I'm carrying my numerous barrels of sludge across the street, and oopsie daisy, I've slipped on a banana peel and they've spilled everywhere.
That's how you get Ninja Turtles.
I mean, you would literally get like better waste management treatment from Tony fucking Soprano and his family. Like, I don't know how it can possibly get worse, but don't worry about it. United Utilities is on the case, and they've promised to reduce their number of spills from nearly 82,000 to a much more manageable
79,
55,000. 55,000. They want to reduce it by a third by 2025. So you're only having over 50,000 spills a year. It's fine. It's good. And in the meantime...
stars, baby.
I mean,
all four of them.
To understand that, though, like, it only counts as a spill, read dump, if it's in an area where they're not allowed to dump it. So if they're redefining estuaries as being ocean, then it's not a spill anymore, baby, and that counts as a reduction.
No, because also specifically, water companies are allowed to dump raw sewage and effluent into publicly accessible water streams, including coastal waters, as long as there's a storm going on. If there's a certain amount of rain falling, they can just open the taps, because then it dilutes. We talked about this on a previous pod.
We went over this before. It was the whole, if you can't smell it, then it doesn't exist.
Something along those lines, yeah. I'm not sure that's the rule, but it might as well
He
be.
who smelt it dealt it. Into statute law.
Basically, yeah.
Thames Water, another fucking king of the hill shit company, by the way, managed to discharge raw sewage into local rivers on 2 out of every 3 days, every day between 2018 and 2021.
That's dedication to the bit.
That's fucking incredible. And mind, this is... We don't actually know how much spills and raw sewage in local water streams is happening, because the Environment Agency is totally reliant on water companies self-reporting. Their mandate
is multiply it by a factor of 3 then, probably.
I mean, you should according to, I can't fully remember the numbers, so I'm a bit iffy on being too specific, but I think it's about the Environment Agency estimate is that all spills and stuff like that is underreported by a factor of about 20%. So you need to add a lot more on top of this, actually. And mind, by the way, when I say the word spill, the Environment Agency counts a spill as like a small pipe that bursts and that is fixed in literally under a day, or a gigantic dam-breaking event that leaks raw sewage into your river for multiple days. That is one spill. So it's all one thing. It's fucking...
It's so fucking rigged. Like, it's just fucking beyond words how insane all of this is.
It's kind of like, Margaret Thatcher comes along and she's like, right, we're going to make society privatised for, the benefit of private interest. And what's the first thing they decide to do? What's the fundamental basis of civilization? Making sure the shit isn't around to make people sick. So they just start with that. It's like, it's really grim.
I've actually held that it's defence of the nation.
So if you're asking, well, what does tend to happen when the company starts self-reporting instead of doing the actual work? This is again from the Financial Times. Southern Water was fined 90 million. This is what we discussed. I couldn't remember which pod it is, but this is the bit we discussed a couple or many pods ago now. Was fined a record 90 million for pollution in 2021. Ofwat had already found that Subwater had manipulated water samples and deliberately misreported data for 7 years until 2017 to avoid financial penalties. The company also used tankers to shift wastewater from problematic sites to better sites to avoid submitting poor readings to the Environment Agency. So they were just gaming the self-installed sensors they had to do, which is fucking incredible. But it's weird because, Jamie, you mentioned this more at the top. They did actually find a way to do better monitoring and check up on leaks. In 2019, the BBC reported that Severn Trent Water had found a really good way of getting monitors out on the cheap. They literally sent Uber and taxi drivers out to take pictures of leaks. So an engineer sitting at home or in a control room somewhere could look at it at their pleasure. They literally sent fucking taxi drivers and Uber drivers out.
So the whole idea of you keep your experts in a central location and then you get them the information and then if need be they follow up in person. I'm not adverse to that, but the implementation leaves a lot to be desired.
I mean,
look, this is just the efficiency of the free market and you're just jealous, James.
But I mean, if you think about it for even more than a second, that's incredibly dangerous for the poor drivers as well. Imagine you're not sent to a broken water pipe somewhere in a residential area, but in a big industrial neighborhood, and fuck knows what that water contains. That could be incredibly personally dangerous if you're not a trained person who knows what they're looking at and looking for.
What if it's full of the slime from Ghostbusters 2?
Well, I think that can only lead to good results. That or turtles, as you mentioned previously. So all of this adds up to, again, according to the Financial Times, only 16% of all UK and coastal waterways and rivers meet minimum EU standards for cleanliness, because the water companies, as mentioned, they really like dumping out untreated sewage and stormwater and just not reporting it when they are doing it illegally. And of course, we now exited the EU.
And that's why we left.
Exactly, because we couldn't handle this overbearing regulatory state anymore. By the way, mind you, it's not always that good, because there have been cases of local people trying to get the data out of the environment agencies and having to go through a 20-year legal battle to get the numbers out of the environment agency and the water companies. So the EA is not necessarily the good guys in this story, but they are
Good
also...
Lord, what is happening on those coastlines? The Northern Lights?
Yeah. The Aurora Boreal. However, so in the UK in general, there are about 15,000 storm overflow pipes that just literally exit in rivers and coastal waters that are used to just dump raw sewage out. And there's the citizens group called Windrush Against Sewage Pollution, or WASP. They noted that about 95%...
The good kind of WASP.
The good kind of WASP. They noted about 95% of all illegal spills, so the ones that don't happen during storm hours, are just literally not reported by the water companies to the environment agencies, even though they should be doing that. I mean, of course they're not, but, you know...
So multiply whatever value of spills or leaks or whatever, multiply that by a factor of 20.
Factor 20, or at least add between 20 and 50% on top of it. At least. Maybe more. Christ knows.
I honestly think it's going to be 3 times, because there's been other industries that have self-reporting requirements, and consistently it shows they only report about a third of the incidents they're meant to. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher, frankly, because we are on a uniquely normal island.
I mean, unfortunately, look, I don't want to be...
A uniquely, normally shitty island.
I don't want to be only the bearer of bad news. Like, there is some good news. Our government regulatory bodies, you know, the ones that, again, Labour says we don't want to nationalise, we want to rely more on our regulators to do good things. So Ofwat is here to save the day. They recently suggested, politely but not enforced, that water companies start linking executive pay to performance. Something, by the way, that doesn't exist yet. That's not enforced by any kind of mandate, because otherwise you wouldn't get the very successful people on board. So you need to have this fucking insanity as well. Also, according to
if you want to keep your high paid executives, give them a golden taser or some shit.
Also, the number of court actions by the Environmental Agency have been falling literally year on year, every year for the last couple of years. And basically, the Environment Agency, again, they are drastically underfunded, so it's not entirely their fault, but they only do something and get into regulatory mode when there's big public pressure and campaigns, as we've seen in the last 2 years. We've seen a few of them. That's when the Environment Agency do something. They react essentially to public pressure campaigns. They don't do their job because either they don't want to or because they physically cannot do it. So,
I mean, I do relate to that.
Right. So anyway, the government also has a bold new stance. They are also really on the case. So see if you can follow the qualifiers in this little sentence. The government's new stance is they are demanding a cut of discharge into bathing waters during swimming season by 70%, but only by 2035.
Wow.
They also have said that they want to reduce total discharges, essentially legal and illegal, by 40% by 2040 and by 80% by 2050. And that's beyond the remit of any existing current government, so you might as well read never. Because that would never fucking exist.
That's actually quite a clever idea, because by the time we hit 2050, those will be actually at sea, those outlets. So, they've won there.
All of this, of course, fixing any of this would require a really significant amount of investment in all aspects of water management. But the companies are a little bit too busy turning out profit for shareholders and enjoying their regional monopolies, which is the last bit I want to talk about is, well, they have a monopoly. They got given a big bag of cash. They didn't have to compete with anybody. And then, were essentially left alone to just cream off the money. So what happened to them? By the way, even Ofwat happily refers in their own literature of the 10 water companies as monopoly providers. They're happy to say that out loud and in public, by the way.
It sounds really bad when you write it down.
Since then, water companies collectively have borrowed more than 53 billion, according to the Financial Times, which averages out to about 2,000 quid per household that they've borrowed. And they've also managed to pay out 72 billion in dividends to the different private owners, including, by the way, specifically through raising debt to pay for dividends, which seems like a very sensible thing for any company to do.
It's a really good job that private companies have that separation between the people who run the company and the actual company itself.
It's great. Yeah.
It must be really fun to play Monopoly and get the little turd made out of pewter and get to pass go and get how many billion? Like, that's fantastic.
Mind you, by the way, that 55 billion in debt loading is without adding in any existing or future pension liabilities or any financial derivative shenanigans.
It's fine. It's fine. There is always money in the banana stand. It's fine.
So if you add in like the pension debts and the financial derivatives, read shenanigans, then their debt loading is easily over 100%. So pretty much all the water companies are financially underwater if you take in that total debt loading.
There it is.
Yeah, I know. Solid comedy right there. And that's despite having a manifest monopoly position and not investing anything. This year, Southern Water, Yorkshire Water, and SES Water, which is parts of Surrey, parts of Sussex, parts of Kent, and Southern London, have all been signalled by Ofwat as having substantial financial weaknesses, according to the Financial Times, which means they could be in really big fucking trouble. But don't worry about it.
I mean, I know this is a rhetorical question, but how do you own a monopoly and then just fail to survive as a business?
Well, it's because it can't. Right, I'm sorry. This drives me nuts. There's some things in our society that can't make a profit. And I don't mean as in like they're not. They shouldn't make a profit. I mean they can. Right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's just certain parts of society you just have to stump up and pay for because we need them to live, and you're not going to make money off of them. And the water and waste management, they're part of it. They are fundamental. They are a necessity to allow you to create secondary markets where there is variability in profit and loss. But these things just have to be in place and have to function. And you can't make money off of them. It's the same. Ultimately, it's the same as the electricity markets. What's basically happening when people are making profit is they're essentially just getting paid by the public purse. They're just screaming money off the top. There's no activity taking place there that can really generate profit. That's just not. It's just not there.
It's literally not there because part of the thing that they have to do, and I know James, you talked about it in different contexts on another podcast. I can't remember which one, but like. The main job of a water company is essentially to do like big maintenance. They just have to replace the pipes and replace their shit. But maintenance is never profitable. Building new shit is profitable.
Your job is to replace the pipe. Oh, I don't wanna.
But that's the thing. It's like, so let's, it's the whole trend of civilization. Like, once you building a thing for the first time, you can say, well, there's a value in productivity add here. And that, if you go by labour theory of value, and even if you go by like, more kind of, libertarian, views of value, then essentially, you can see there's money being added, but maintenance isn't. Maintenance is just holding static. Money you pour into maintenance doesn't give you dividends, it just upholds the status quo. And so if you're looking for a return on your investment, then you can't make money off of doing that. You just can't. You just straight up, it doesn't exist.
I mean, you can do it if you just like load up giant amounts of debt in these quasi-monopoly companies and just assume, as I think we all should, that the interest rates will never rise, because that's something that just doesn't happen. But don't worry about it. Anglia Water, at least, still paid out 92 million last year in dividends to its ultimate owners via a number of other companies, which happen to include the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund, the Canada Pension Plan, and IFM Global Infrastructure Fund. I don't know who owns that. It's fine. It's cool. But at the same time, by the way, customers of Anglia Water still got a 5% increase on their water bill. And on average, each and every one of you listening in the UK, 20% of your water bill goes to servicing these debt loads and providing a return to shareholders. That's like at least 20%. It could be more depending on which company you're with. But don't worry about it. Anglia Water's been... They really focused on the ball, and they've set aside at least a couple of million to improve customer service and help them with their bills. And by help with, I don't mean forgive their bills, I mean presumably smear out the repayments over a longer period of time, like you will be doing with your gas bills come January. It's great. Southern Water, by the way, the people we talked about on the previous pod when they got hit with the £90 million fine for dumping billions of litres of raw sewage water into rivers and seas, they self-estimate that if they were to totally replace all their sewage works and pipes and, get a really clean new system that would suss out these leaks and, stop the entire ecosystem from fucking dying because of all the shit we pump in it, for Southern Water alone, their self-estimate is that would cost £50 billion pounds. So literally as much as the total debt taken on by all water companies since 1991. And that's for one. So multiply the bill by 10, and then you get to about a figure that we would need to spend to get the UK's creaking Victorian, and I do mean literally Victorian, infrastructure ready for the age of climate catastrophe. That's what it would take. And if you're wondering, by the way...
ready for a turds of a new generation.
Hey! If you're wondering who gets the dividends, me too. This is again from the Financial Times. Since 2007, Southern Water has been owned by a consortium of infrastructure investors through a complex multi-layered structure involving 12 intermediate holdings, companies, and whose ultimate parent is Greensands Holdings, which is incorporated in Jersey. The largest shareholder in Greensands Holding was, until September, a Cayman Island registered infrastructure fund advised by JP Morgan. No idea. Literally no idea who the fuck these people are. By the way, even as Southern Water was paying that massive fine, they were also paying 190 million in dividends to whoever it is in the Cayman Islands. But they also, at the same time, halved the contributions to the Southern Water Employee Pension Scheme. So it works out really well, just for everybody. It's great. But don't you worry.
Again, everyone gets paid. Nobody goes to jail. We're all doomed.
But don't you worry. Look, Southern Water, this sounds really shit, look, right. But they have a major new investor that's recently pumped in about £1 billion. That investor is called Macquarie. They're an Australian infrastructure bank. And they have a good track record of these things because they previously owned Thames Water from 2006 to 2016 before selling it, among others, to the Kuwaiti Investment Authority and Borealis Infrastructure, which is ultimately owned by a Canadian pension fund. But, I don't want to say they mistreated Thames Water when they did own it, but they did saddle Thames Water with an extra $2 billion of debt on its books, according to the BBC. And that $2 billion was to pay Macquarie Investment Banking itself back for buying Thames Water in the first place. So they bought Thames Water with debt, if this seems familiar, then loaded that debt on the company books, and then walked away with, new water.
Is this the investment bank version of the left-wing Patreon £5?
It's the collateralized loan obligations that we talked about a few weeks ago. It's pretty much exactly that. The thing that's not a problem when the interest rates rise. So overall, again, the huge debt load on these water companies, meaning they cannot afford to do serious upgrading. They can only do literal spot welding shit when things explode. This, again, from the Financial Times. One water industry executive said that companies were spending more on maintaining deteriorating assets than replacing them. He pointed to the use of water jets to deal with blockages as an example. They are a poor substitute for improving the network and will actually hasten pipe deterioration. So you can fix it by just shooting a whole bunch of water through it once, but that will just cause the pipes to deteriorate further and create more leaks than the 2 billion litres we already have flowing out of the UK's water systems day in and fucking day out.
When there's no money to be made, all you do is the bare fucking minimum, and the rest of it you get basically paid by the public. That's it.
And if you were wondering, by the way, well, maybe we can live with the lead in the water, so maybe my children's brains can just be soft and spongy for the rest of our lives, and I can live with all that. But I really do want the fish and the seagulls to be happier. There was a government report out last year. They asked a consultancy company to say how much would it cost to fix the storm overflows and therefore either partially or completely halt the raw sewage dumping from impacting our beaches and rivers. So that report found that this would cost between 350 and 600 billion pounds to completely fix the problem. And that would, in this scenario, mean that your water bill would have to go up between 550 and 1,000 quid a year and be highly disruptive. Because we haven't done anything. Because it's not the job of the private market to fix anything in this stupid fucking economy.
I mean, this is exactly the exact same approach that the West at large has taken to climate catastrophe, right? Just if we do nothing, then it's fine. But oh no, the costs of actually doing something are very cheap. Well, comparatively very cheap if we were to do anything, like in the 60s or 70s or the 80s. But now that everything is so completely overburdened, completely falling apart, held together with blue tack and like fucking shoestring, it is going to cost an insane amount because of the amount of stuff that's just accumulated over decades of neglect.
The key thing though is that it's going to cost a lot of money and not return a profit, so no one's going to do it.
And to be really clear about this, okay, you might think, well, are they just being shits? And it's like, yes, and also the system encourages it, because if let's say you are that impossible unicorn that of a board of one of these companies that decides you want to do it right and you want to do good for the public. Doesn't exist, but let's say we're in make believe land. If you do that, if you actually make the investment, etc., then you are going to be, by definition, non-profitable, or even just let's be really kind and say it's possible. We're really sniffing the glue here. You are just less profitable. Well, because you're a private entity, that means that all the investors are going to go to the other, more profitable companies. That's basically how it works, and it means that essentially you're putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage. It's the competition. It's just a fucking competition, because this is something you can't compete on, because there's no profit to really be made, and therefore it incentivizes you to do nothing. It's like the same as climate change, literally the same. There's no profit to be made in avoiding the perils of climate change.
It was climate change I was talking about,
yeah, exactly.
Like,
and that's
you could argue that, it's surely apparent to everyone that if, just everyone dies, there's no one left to buy, fucking McDonald's or some shit like that. But McDonald's aren't going to be the ones to stick their neck out and put that, the cost of preventing that on their fucking balance sheet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the government aren't going to do it. The best you're going to get from the government is they're going to give, 20 billion pounds to fucking do carbon capture or seed the sky with reflective particles or some shit. But they're going to give that 20 billion to some guy that bought them a fucking bag of crisps in the pub once.
They're going to give it to a wonderful. They're going to give it to a wonderful public-private cooperation where the public just pumps in the money and then the private sector just sticks it in their back pocket and fucks off to the Cayman Islands. Because that's what's happened for the last fucking 30 years in the water sector, and 40 years, 50 years, or Christ knows how much since the neoliberal turn in the 1980s. And just by way of wrapping this up.
And the pipes aren't going to get fixed because, you might see, lead pipes poisoning children and giving them lasting brain damage, but to the government, that's securing the next generation of Tory voters.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. By way of conclusion, so in July, if you remember, in July of last year, there was a huge rainstorm in London. It dumped about a month's worth of rain in about 90 minutes. The result was flooded tube stations, road closures, and literal torrents of raw sewage exploding into people's home due to the rainwater backing up the entire sewage system. That happened in one of the richest boroughs of one of the world's wealthiest cities, where they just finished a massive $5 billion sewage infrastructure project. It's the Thames something it's called. Oh, the Thames Tideway project. That's what it's called. And as we are now definitely, and I think as we're recording, I'm fucking sweltering again. We are definitely in the cool zone of climate consequence, i.e. we are way past the point where we could adapt things small, both in terms of droughts and floods and the absolute demand to keep up with life in general, for deep understanding and deep investment in the infrastructure that literally supports our lives, because water is kind of critical to our fucking survival. Even in London, they couldn't do it. They didn't want to do it, and they haven't been able to fix it. And all I know is that even with all the costs that are associated, even if it costs 500 billion that nobody wants to spend because the Labour Party is run by morons and the Tories are the Tories, we need, even given all that, starting yesterday on fixing this problem, on new pipes and stopping literally 25,000 litres of water fucking leaking out into nothing every single second of every single fucking day in the UK. Even with all of that, we need to start yesterday and not in 2025 or not in 2030 or not in 2050 or whatever horseshit the government promises in limited circumstances. Because much like the buses we talked about last month, this thing it's falling apart. Like we've hit bedrock and we're just chipping into it now. There's nothing. This system cannot and will never be resolved or fixed or maintained by the private sector, because, James, as you said, even if they were 100% good boys and girls, they would still abstract profit and give it to investors rather than reinvest and make something actually happen. There is no way on God's green earth you can't do anything unless you nationalize this and much of the rest of the UK, because capitalism has a death drive and doesn't want to fix this. And water is such a fucking blindingly obvious example that literally doing this, I've just like the podcasting veins in my forehead have just been fucking popping all day reading about this. You cannot run a society like this.
Rob, would you like me to tell you a little anecdote to cheer you up at the end here?
It'd have to be all right. Let's see if you can make that happen.
So, Sir Terry Pratchett, famous writer. There's a lovely story about him, which I think is pretty fantastic and sums all of this up beautifully. He got invited to a few, fantasy conventions and onto panels with other writers, but they stopped inviting him after a while to certain ones. And the reason is because of this. He got invited to a panel, and he sits down, and there's 6 authors on the stage, and someone put their hand up in the audience, and they're asking questions, and they asked, so, when you come to designing a fantasy city, what are the steps you go through? And so we start with the first author, and Terry Pratchett's right at the end. And the first author's like, well, I think about language, and I think about how language is really shaped by the aesthetics of culture, etc. Then the second one says, yes, that's good. And I also think about the physical beauty of where they'll be living, and I think about the themes that are inherent in the text. And so they go through all of them until they get to the very end. And Terry Pratchett kind of, coughs and goes, well, first thing you have to consider when building a city is how does fresh water get in and how does the shit go out? And that was pretty much it. He never got invited back again because he showed all the rest of them up. And, there is a reason that in his most famous work, it's built around a big fucking river which is polluted to fuck called the Yank. So, it's the sort of thing which is fundamentally important, but no one wants to talk about it. And, thus goes our society.
Yeah.
And hence this podcast episode.
Almost, I think, David, or do you want to cut it here?
Yes. No. We'll do this. It's fairly quick. So, as a little treat, seeing as we were too hot to record the other week, we'll go a bit longer. And I have an article.
Oh no.
It's a short one.
I haven't seen this, by the way. It's a rare time where I have no idea what the fuck's going on.
This is like the time you sprung Sinan on us. I wasn't emotionally prepared for this.
By God, is that Jordan's music? When does gratitude demand a gratuity?
What?
Yes. I'm gonna. Please don't look up who wrote it. Please don't look up who wrote this. I want to keep that a surprise for the end. How should kindness be rewarded? Is it truly its own reward, or is it our duty to see that a good turn done to us by a total stranger has its payback somewhat earlier and somewhere more convenient than in heaven? It's tricky. It's really tricky. So, I was in a Nisa local in West Wales a few days ago for a few bits and bobs. Bottled water for my children because the tap water tastes of pencils. Sliced white bread, Panda Cola, Finder's crispy pancakes,
Is this corn?
Super strength cider, and badger ham, because that is what they sell in a Nisa local.
What?
When I got to the till and realised that I had... When I got to the till and realised that I had left my wallet at the property that I had rented deliberately to inflate the Welsh housing market and put local families in hostels. I had my phone with me, but my Apple Pay is linked to my Amex because I have literally no idea how to change it to my far more useful bank debit card, and nowhere west of Bristol takes Amex. In fact, if they even get wind of the fact that you have an Amex card, they burn you to death inside a giant wicker accountant. I apologised to the
This is
guy.
either Giles Corran or it's Jeremy Clarkson.
I apologised to the guy on the till and asked if he could please put my groceries aside while I drove back to the house I was renting, specifically in order that he should never be able to afford the property in his hometown to get my wallet. But then a lovely Pembrokeshire accent just behind me said, "How much is it, love? I can pay for those and you can just pay me back online." "It's £13.74, I said to a lady of about my age wearing a red t-shirt and a big smile. "Are you sure?" "Of course, dear, you're on holiday. You don't want to go herring around in this heat. Here, Barry, put it on my card. I write down my details and you do it whenever." And so she did. She's a local cleaner, working mostly in the rentals that are supposedly tearing her community apart, and just obviously a very good person, as all Welsh people are. Which is why I married into them and come here on holiday every year. So I felt a bit bad tearing up her bank deets in the car and cackling at the tidy con that I had pulled. Not really. I paid her immediately and was about to round it up to 50 quid as a thank you because that seemed like the right thing to do when I realised that it might be a bit condescending. It might embarrass her. I didn't want her to think that I thought she had helped me out with any hope of advantage or that I had made a mistake, but I want something good to happen to her. Can I send her something a bit later as I have her details? What about at Christmas? And if 50 quid, then why not 100? Why not 1,000? If she randomly does a favour for a stranger who turns out to be rich, should the story not end with that kind woman getting some big reward that makes her week or makes her Christmas? Or am I just being smug and narcissistic and vile?
Yes.
Tell me what to do.
No, writing this article was when you were being smug and vile and narcissistic.
Yes.
Maybe this woman paid for your groceries because she just wanted you to get out of the shop because your enormous head was knocking over all the displays.
Well, that was an article by the former BBC employee Giles Corran.
Yeah.
Womp.
Get it fucking
off to spend, in his own words, off to spend more time with his second daughter.
Oh, dear.
And we can leave that in because that is what he said in response to this.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. Any inference happens in your heads. Fuck him. He's just lost his job with the BBC. They let him go from some fucking hotel fronting show. Like he stay in the fanciest hotels in the fucking world, and they kept him around for so long, and then they got shot of him. And there was a big piece in the Daily Mail that very seriously linked that happening and all of the shit that he said about Dawn Foster after she died.
What?
Yes. So this is a deeply funny fucking end to that little bit of his career.
Yeah,
this better be the first domino in a long series of them as his career.
The best part of that was that, like, the BBC said they're looking for someone who's the opposite of Giles to replace him.
Yes. Get it up you. So yeah, I just thought I would end that on a little article where Giles Corran once again tells on himself.
Giles Corran, Dawn Foster forever.
Exactly, and so we can say that. Fuck
and
him.
on that note, I think we can stop it.
We can definitely stop there. Thank you for listening. We will have another bonus episode out this month. You can get that on the Patreon, which is patreon.com/praxiscast. You can get merch. We have t-shirts and vests for some reason. That's praxiscast.tmail.com.
Yeah, get your hottest summer on record t-shirts now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or get them sleeveless.
Yeah.
No, buy them with
Sun's
sleeves.
out, guns out.
Hide your shame.
Yeah. You buy that t-shirt, hottest summer on record, and you're good for years. You'll get to use it every year.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh wow, I've just got
that. And also it'll be increasingly appropriate as it shows a water-free hellscape with a skeleton on it, which, as I'm sure by the end of now, you will rejoice in being part of because you're all English.
Yep. Describing the visual medium again.
Could we get some of those t-shirts that change colour in the heat and just calibrate them for comedy temperatures?
That sounds a lot like work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jamie, why don't you design a shirt?
What do you think this is? Like Tomorrow's World?
Podcasting is Praxis introduces the Always Online T-shirt.
Brian Cox, come on the pod.
A great actor.
Fuck this fucking edit. Man. We also have streams. Streams are happening when and how often?
Thursdays. Usually
We're
8
nearly
o'clock till
done
10.
with the fucking Vikings, and to celebrate, we might be playing a different Viking game afterwards.
Fucking hell.
To be confirmed.
Yeah, can we claim that as a work expense?
James.
I mean, depends. Like, you know, we'd have to decide as a collective and compare the incomings to the outgoings, and sure.
Your call is important to us.
On the subject of things which are nearly done, though, this Friday, the 5th of August, I will hopefully be finishing Elden Ring.
Incredible.
Nice. Hooray.
The last person in the world to finish.
James
Elden
can
Ring.
finally get Elden married.
Yeah, get the world record slowest playthrough.
Yeah. Any percent still run. Okay, on that note, let's fuck off, and you two should fuck off and enjoy whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, but come back next
Bye.
week for a very special episode.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye.